It's baffled scholars for 2 millennia. It is a puzzle made of multi-dimensional elements, an enigma with roots that reach back to the dawning of time, perhaps before. Daniel explained part of it. Ezekiel and Isaiah had glimpses into it. John saw it all for the time of the end. That time is now. Join Derek and Sharon Gilbert on a journey that spans the course of history, from Eden to Mount Hermon, from Hermon to Babel, from Babel to Rome, from Rome to the cross, and from there to us. Biblical prophecy is coming true before your eyes, and to understand it, you must discern the times both then and now. It's time to unravel the threads of this all-encompassing prophetic paradox. It's time to unravel Revelation.
The Riders of Zechariah. Welcome to Unraveling Revelation from Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and you were probably sitting there going, wait a minute. They talked about the horses and stuff in Zechariah 6 last time.
But
Nope. Zechariah 1.
you see, though, the trouble you got us into by asking us to compare the Riders of Revelation 6
Yeah.
to the chariots of Zechariah 6.
You're going to think, are they ever going to get to the fifth seal?
Eventually, yes. But there's some interesting connections here between the Riders of Zechariah, the Riders of Revelation 6, but also some Mesopotamian religion that we've not previously discussed. It's a myth that you probably have never heard of that was more popular in Mesopotamia, ancient Babylon and those areas, than the Epic of Gilgamesh, which you probably have heard of.
More popular because there have been more copies of it found,
Right.
so it shows that it was like a paperback summer reading list thing that everybody had a copy of. If Derek weren't so interested in knowing what the beliefs of the people at the time that these events were occurring, those who the prophets had to go to and say, look, God has shown me this. There's a reason. It's cultural context. And the Lord uses the things that the fallen realm is known for and appropriates them for himself, or uses that language to speak to the people at the time. And we can go back. We've lost access to a lot of those stories and that language, those metaphors, those symbols. So I think going back, and we do this, you've been doing this for years, and you and I do it together in the book Veneration, but trying to find out the mindset of the pre-first century world.
So we are looking at Zechariah, we're looking at a book that was probably written shortly after the return of the exiles from Babylon.
Yeah, around 6th century BC.
Late 6th century BC. In fact, we can date stamp it because Zechariah, like many of the prophets do, put notes in there that refer to the specific day and month during the reign of such and such king. Zechariah 1 verse 1 says, in the 8th month, in the 2nd year of Darius, the word of Yahweh came to the prophet Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo. Now, Darius ruled Persia from the years 522 until 486 BC. So the 2nd year of Darius would put this in about the year 521 or 520 BC. So we have an idea now of when this is taking place. Remember those dates because that's relevant to the Mesopotamian stuff that we're going to get to here in just a little bit. Now, last week, of course, we talked about the chariots of Zechariah and compared the colors of the chariots to the riders of Revelation 6.
And the idea that when you have chariots and horses in a vision, that it probably refers to this crossing from one domain into another, crossing from the unseen realm into the seen realm. And we're going to see a little hint of that right here in chapter 1.
So we're going to go down to Zechariah 1, begin at verse 7, which is the vision of a horseman. And this is where we connect Zechariah 1 to Zechariah 6 to Revelation 6. And again, Zechariah date stamps his vision. On the 24th day of the 11th month, which is the month of Shevat, in the 2nd year of Darius, the word of Yahweh came to his prophet Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo. That would place this vision in January or February of 519 BC.
Wow, that's pretty specific.
Right. Verse 8, I saw in the night, and behold, a man riding on a red horse. He was standing among the myrtle trees in the glen, and behind him were red, sorrel, and white horses. Now, I grew up in Chicago, so I don't know from horses. What is a sorrel horse?
It's sort of a chestnut color, reddish brown, I think.
Okay.
Does that sound right? Unless you'd have to go back to the original language, because then that's where I'm going to go right here and see what it's saying in chapter 8. And the word here that is translated, it's saruk, and it can be translated speckled.
Okay, now here's where we look at the Septuagint translation, and there's a more modern Septuagint. There are some online that are open source, free. The Brenton translation, which is also available from the Skywatch TV store as one of the researchers' reference library of ancient texts.
Yeah, it's also it's no. I think that is the only way it's available, because I don't think did they put that on the DVD? Did they data disc?
I'm going to have to look. In fact, we've got a copy of that data disc back in our other office here, so I'll grab that during the break, and we'll take a look. But I think it is, actually. But even so, you can find it online, the translation of the Septuagint. And the reason it's relevant is this was translated by Jewish religious scholars about 200 to 300 years before the birth of Jesus, using Hebrew texts that aren't available to us anymore, and were probably not available to the Jewish scholars who translated the Masoretic text, which is the Hebrew text on which most of our modern English Bibles are based. So sometimes we get a different look at what the Jewish scholars in the centuries before Jesus thought about the Old Testament books that they were translating into Greek.
And you also get their mindset, because they were closer to the time that this was written, that the prophecy was given, than we are today.
Absolutely. So in the Lexham English Septuagint, which is a modern translation from the Greek into English, on the 24th day of the 11th month, I have seen in the night, and behold, a man mounted upon a red horse, and this one stood among the hills of shade, and behind him were red and dapple gray and multicolored and white horses. So 4 horses instead of 3.
That's really interesting. That's closer to Revelation chapter 6.
So we continue then. Then I said, "What are these, my Lord?" The angel who talked with me said, "I will show you what they are." So the man who was standing among the myrtle trees answered, "These are they whom Yahweh has sent to patrol the earth." Now that's interesting, because that reminds me of Job, the first couple chapters of Job, where the sons of God gathered, and God asked the Satan, Shaitan, "Where have you been?"
Yes, I've been walking up and down, to and fro in the earth. And he clearly is doing this as a scout, looking for obedience to the Lord, looking for people who might not be as faithful as they should be. In other words, he's like a sheriff. He's walking around seeing who's obeying the law, and if he finds somebody that's maybe not obeying the law, he may have to, take him to court. But he definitely brings up somebody that he thinks is just a little bit too obedient to be believed. That's in Job.
Right. But here, again, the Septuagint version suggests that same sort of activity. The one standing among the hills, answered and said to me, "These are those whom the Lord sent forth to travel around the land." What we're getting here is a sense of angelic beings who were basically traveling around the earth to report back to God on what was happening. In other words, watchers.
Well, yes, and I think we still have that going on today, because Paul told us to be very careful that we entertain strangers, that we're kind to strangers, because we never know when we might be entertaining an angel, a messenger from the Lord, without any clue. He says an angel unawares. So anyway, these are they whom Yahweh has sent to patrol the earth. And they answered, and here we go, and this is interesting, because the one who spoke from among the myrtle trees is now identified in verse 11. Zechariah 1:11, they answered the angel of Yahweh who was standing among the myrtle trees. The angel of Yahweh, that is a Christophany in the Old Testament. He was the second power in heaven. Yahweh, the angel of Yahweh, who was the form of God that humans could perceive without being destroyed. Sort of like an avatar, but more, tangible.
Right. And this was a common understanding among the Jews in the Old Testament period, really until about the 2nd century AD, when Christians made a point of saying, we know who the angel of Yahweh was. That was Jesus of Nazareth. And then the teaching among Jewish scholars, religious scholars in the 2nd century moved away from this. They're saying, no. There was only, Yahweh is one.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he is one in that he is incomparable. But there is, throughout the Old Testament, you see that second power in heaven, that angel of Yahweh. And that is Yahweh in another form.
Sometimes called Yahweh, but not Yahweh.
Yeah. A Christophany, Jesus in the Old Testament. They answered the angel of Yahweh, and who was standing among the myrtle trees, and said, we have patrolled the earth, and behold, all the earth remains at rest. Then the angel of Yahweh said, O Yahweh of hosts. So again, Yahweh, but not Yahweh. He's speaking to, one form speaking to another.
It's like David in the Psalm saying, the Lord said to my Lord.
Right. O Yahweh of hosts, or Yahweh of armies, how long will you have no mercy on Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, against which you have been angry these 70 years? Remember, again, this was being done about the time of the return of the exiles from Babylon. And Yahweh answered gracious and comforting words to the angel who talked with me. So the angel who talked with me said to me, cry out, thus says Yahweh of hosts, I am exceedingly jealous for Jerusalem and for Zion, and I'm exceedingly angry with the nations that are at ease. For while I was angry but a little, they furthered the disaster. They took advantage of God's judgment to plunder, to profit. Therefore, thus says Yahweh, I have returned to Jerusalem with mercy. My house shall be built in it, declares Yahweh of hosts, and the measuring line shall be stretched out over Jerusalem. And we see that prophecy of the measuring line in Ezekiel around chapter 40.
Yes, and I think this is referring to what is sometimes referred to as the third temple. Yes, indeed, the second temple it's restored. The original temple is restored when Cyrus gives the decree that they can go back. But this seems to be referring to another one, what's known as Ezekiel's temple, because you see that measuring line stretched forth in Ezekiel.
Yeah, chapter 40 of Ezekiel, the man there whose appearance was like bronze.
Yeah, judgment.
Yeah, who stretched out a measuring line around Jerusalem. So again, I have returned to Jerusalem with mercy. My house shall be built in it, declares Yahweh of hosts, and the measuring line shall be stretched out over Jerusalem. Cry out again, thus says Yahweh of hosts, my cities shall again overflow with prosperity, and Yahweh will again comfort Zion and again choose Jerusalem. An already but not yet fulfillment, because there was a temple rebuilt, but there will yet be a temple. Now, will it be a physical third temple, as some in Israel would like to see now, or are we talking about Ezekiel's temple, which won't happen until when Jesus returns?
Exactly. I think it's probably that.
Yeah. Now, tell you what, we'll get to the connection to this epic from ancient Mesopotamia and the connection between the watchers of Genesis 6 and end times Bible prophecy when Unraveling Revelation continues.
Cool stuff coming.
Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourself for one of the most shocking special offers in Skywatch TV history. We proudly announce the Shadowland Ultimate Collection. For your $35 donation during this very limited time offer, you'll receive the groundbreaking new book by Dr. Thomas Horn, Shadowland, that exposes the deep state actors at war with Christianity, Donald Trump, and America's destiny. The best-selling book by Pentagon analyst Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis, Progressive Evil: How Radicals Are Redefining America's Rights, Making Her Globally Irrelevant for the End Times. Author Carl Gallup's brand new book, Masquerade, that explains the supernatural forces operating behind current global events. But this critical 3-volume collection also includes the original 5-part Skywatch Television Shadowland Investigative Series on DVD, absolutely free. Moreover, this incredible series contains the never-before-released on DVD, world-exclusive behind-the-scenes interview regarding perhaps the biggest scandal and cover-up in U.S. history. So hot, we're unable to discuss the specific contents on network television involving a 2-hour investigative interview with new forensic information connected to the Robert Mueller report that may soon send shockwaves through Washington, D.C. and around the world. But we're still not done. You'll also receive the Best of Defender Publishing ebook collection on data disc, featuring 70 of the most information-packed, best-selling books in Defender history. These full-length works are in popular ebook formats so you can read them on EPUB, PDF, Kindle, and other handheld electronic devices. Give this collection as the ultimate gift to somebody you know, or take them with you wherever you go. Valued at over $700 all by itself. This unprecedented collection sold separately holds a retail value of over $800. Yours now for only $35 plus shipping and handling. Don't miss this once-in-a-lifetime Skywatch TV exclusive offer, the Shadowland Ultimate Collection, available now at skywatchtvstore.com. Order online or call 1-844-750-4985.
Welcome back to Unraveling Revelation from Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and we are in the Book of Zechariah, believe it or not, Zechariah 1. But there's so much really interesting stuff in here that I think helps you to understand Revelation 6.
Yeah, it is an amazing thing to realize that you can't really understand Revelation until you understand what the Old Testament prophets knew. Because John was essentially drawing on what had been revealed to them. And it shouldn't surprise us, really, because the author really is the Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm. And so you've got one author working through different men spread over 1,500 years of history, from Moses down to the time of the apostles. And here is one of those really neat little historical details that you don't know unless you're a geek. And actually spend
and I'm Mrs. Geek, Mr. and Mrs. Geek.
Spend your time reading archaic stuff from ancient Mesopotamia. Zechariah 1, beginning at verse 18. And I lifted my eyes and saw, and behold, 4 horns.
It's like, what the heck?
Yeah, where did
those come from?
And I said to the angel who talked with me, what are these? And he said to me, these are the horns that have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. Now, you may know that in the ancient world, horns, especially those connected to the bulls, and especially to the archaic form of cattle that was known in the ancient Near East, the aurochs. That's A-U-R-O-C-H-S. The aurochs. Huge. They stood like 6 foot at the shoulder. Okay, these were massive creatures known for their power, and their horns represented power, especially military power in the ancient world. Last Clash of the Titans, I got a whole chapter on how bull imagery, specifically the aurochs, is a very ancient symbol connected to these small g, fallen, rebellious gods.
The word here is keren, and it is a word that you see over and over again. Corn, horn, because K and H sometimes interchange, and Hernunos, who is Chronos, exactly. Think of the crowns that kings wear. Mm-hmm. Kings are declaring themselves powerful as the bull.
Right, and in the ancient Sumerian artwork, the gods were always depicted as wearing these hats or helmets that had multiple sets of horns. And unless you think we're stretching the etymology here because the words sound alike, we are basing this on peer-reviewed academic research who have connected this Semitic Hebrew word keren and the etymology behind the name Kronos, who was king of the Titans, the leader of the Watchers who descended on Mount Hermon, and the connection between Hernunos and Kronos. Likewise, we're not making this up. This is coming from academic research. Here's the cool part. Zechariah 1, beginning at verse 20. Then Yahweh showed me 4 craftsmen. Craftsmen. And I said, what are these coming to do? He said, these are the horns that scattered Judah so that no one raised his head. In other words, that men were too scared to stand up. And these have come to terrify them to cast down the horns of the nations who lifted up their horns against the land of Judah to scatter it. Now, what is the connection there with craftsmen? The word translated craftsman is
Karash.
Karash, and it's used elsewhere in the Old Testament to mean those who work with wood or metal or jewels, how you would translate the word. But the connection in the context of the ancient Near East is this. In the Epic of Erra, E-R-R-A, who was a god of violence and chaos in the ancient world, a god of plagues and disaster, often identified as another aspect of the Babylonian god Nergal.
Who is
Nergal,
also Resheph.
Resheph of the Canaanites. We've talked about Resheph before and connected Resheph to the rider, the first rider in Revelation 6, the rider on the white horse.
Also known as Apollo.
Right. Gatekeeper to the underworld. So significant in a lot of ways in the beliefs of the pagans around ancient Israel, which the prophets would have known, especially since they just spent 70 years in exile in the midst of Babylonia, surrounded by this religion. Well, the Epic of Erra, as we mentioned at the beginning of the program, was as well known, if not more so, than the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is famous. You probably heard of it. It's considered the oldest existing epic poetry on earth. Dates back to the 3rd millennium BC, but the Epic of Erra, probably written around 1000 BC. The oldest texts that they found come from the 7th century BC, so maybe 150 years before the prophet Zechariah. But there have been 36 copies of this text found, where there are only half a dozen of Gilgamesh that have been found. So the Epic of Erra, we think, was better known in ancient Babylonia, ancient Mesopotamia, than Gilgamesh. And it's a story of how the god Erra lost his temper and was just destroying everything until he finally calmed down. But the key is that in this epic, the god Marduk, who was the chief god of the Babylonian pantheon, I almost said the pablum, the chief of the pantheon in Babylon. He was the king of the gods.
Babylon.
Yeah, he talks to Erra, who's destroying everything, and describes how once Marduk himself lost his temper and sent a flood and said, the survivors of the deluge saw what was done. Shall I raise my weapon and destroy the rest? I sent those craftsmen down to the depths. I ordered them not to come up. The word translated craftsman in Akkadian is apkalu. And the apkalu was what the watchers, or what the watchers were called in Mesopotamia.
Well, that Marduk is taking, is it Marduk?
Marduk.
That is taking credit for thrusting them down to Tartarus.
Tartarus, right, because he sent them down to the Apsu, the abyss, Tartarus, which is what God did to the watchers who descended to Mount Hermon in Genesis chapter 6. 2 Peter 2:4 identifies those as the ones who were thrust down to Tartarus. The English Bible says hell, but the Greek word is Tartarau, which is not Hades. That's a different place. That connects the sin of the watchers, the angels in Genesis 6, to the watchers, the Apkalu of Mesopotamia, the craftsmen of the Epic of Erra. And here in Zechariah, we see God sending forth craftsmen to punish those who raised their horns, who sent their armies against Judah, above and beyond what God had decreed as judgment for the rebellious people of the kingdom of Judah. So I think in this context, Zechariah 1, where we're looking at these riders who are clearly supernatural, because you get the angel of the Lord, angel of Yahweh, there amongst these red and dappled and sorrel horses. You've got these craftsmen who are then sent forth to bring God's judgment. I think these craftsmen in Zechariah are watchers, watcher-class angels who are still faithful to God.
I think you may be onto something, because he definitely says, this is verse 21, what are these coming to do? He said, these are the horns that scattered Judah, so that no one raised his head, and these have come to terrify them, to cast down the horns of the nations who lifted up their horns against the land of Judah, to scatter it. Now, I believe that this prophecy is going to be fulfilled for Zechariah very quickly, but I believe it's and already, but not yet. I think the Lord is saying this is also going to happen in the last days. He is going to send out his faithful Abkalu, his faithful watchers, his faithful riders, and they are going to, and I'm not talking about the ones in Revelation, but I think he is sending out his warriors ahead of his arrival to cast down the heads, we're talking spiritual heads, of the nations who have lifted up their horns, their kings, against the land of Judah to scatter it. Look, there are things going on in Israel right now that are really, really putting pressure upon those who live there. And it's more than just COVID-19. There are internal pressures through politics. There are external pressures to divide Jerusalem. Most of the world, most of the leaders of the world are against Israel. Praise God for right now, our country is still supporting Israel. Because look, there is judgment coming for those who work against it.
And the connection here with Revelation 6, again, getting back to the riders, the four riders of the apocalypse, I think we're seeing that these craftsmen, these riders, the chariot riders of Zechariah 6, and the riders of Revelation 6 suggest that we are dealing with supernatural entities here. One of the things I think we fall into, that's a temptation that draws us into interpreting things incorrectly, is trying to look for naturalistic explanations, interpretations for the riders of the apocalypse and for some of the really weird imagery, the things that come out of the abyss in Revelation 9. Those are the watchers. Those are the entities who are currently in Tartarus.
Yeah, they're not helicopters.
Right. Yes. Attack helicopters. Okay. No. Interesting theory, but no, we're dealing with the supernatural realm here. And John clearly knew what had been revealed to Zechariah, because the imagery of the colored horses and the riders on them is an echo of what Zechariah wrote in chapter 1 and in chapter 6. The measuring line, which continues, by the way, in Zechariah chapter 2, we see in Ezekiel 40, but we also see that in the book of Revelation.
Yes.
All of this fits together, and you can't really understand Revelation unless you go back and see how John drew on what had been revealed to the prophets.
Amen to that. Well, we will continue next week with this. And did you find out about Septuagint?
You know, I'm pretty sure that it's in there, but you can find out for sure online, skywatchtvstore.com. Just a reminder that because in Missouri we are now restricted to staying at home, the easiest way to either ask a question or place an order with the Skywatch TV store is through the website, skywatchtvstore.com. There is a contact us page at the website. We're working with a skeleton crew at the office until this is passed, which will be the end of April here in Missouri. So we appreciate your patience during this time. But again, as you saw in the offer for the Shadowland collection during the break, the DVD or the CD, data CD with the 70 Defender books on it in ebook format, EPUB, PDF, Kindle format. It includes many of the recent books published by Defender, including many of the books from the Researcher's Library of Ancient Texts. So do take advantage of that, because for your donation of just $35, getting those 70 books plus the Shadowland collection, or the other collection that offers it, which is Tom Horn's Wormwood Prophecy collection, a great way to spend some time to educate yourself during this period where we're dealing with this crisis.
There are lots and lots of offers there. Sadly, we're out of time.
Yes, we thank you for watching. This is Unraveling Revelation from Skywatch TV.